Thank you and welcome to our session today, and thank you so much for joining us. In the next hour, we'll be introducing the newly released CorelDRAW Technical Suite 2021. You'll be able to see some of the compelling new features and enhancements in action that are all designed to help you work faster with a reimagined approach to technical illustration. My name is Jo Levens, and I work in the business marketing team based here in the UK. I'm also delighted to introduce to you today my colleague Christian Schmal, who is the product manager for technical graphics, and he'll be presenting CorelDRAW Technical Suite 2021. Based near Cologne, Christian trained as a mechanical engineer and has further certification as a technical illustrator. He has an extensive background working in the technical illustration software industry, and he's part of the team that's specialised in Corel's technical illustration software that ensures that our solutions continually meet client requirements and expectations, from things like 3D visualization to multimedia publishing, whilst always adhering to the latest technical specifications. So with that introduction, Christian, over to you.
Thank you very much, Jo, and let's move on to the CorelDRAW Technical Suite 2021 as mentioned. First of all, also from me, Christian Schmel, a warm welcome to all of you for the presentation of the current version. But first of all, some basics about the suite itself. The Technical Suite is a solution for technical communication and consists of a CorelDRAW graphics suite extended by the programs Corel Designer and XVL Studio, as we can see the icons on top here. With naming it Technical Communication, we summarize sub-eras such as classic technical illustration, for example the well-known exploded views, technical drawings with their hatchings and dimensions, and all other more technical information representations, for example also from architecture. So as a special feature with Technical Suite, you are not reduced to technical illustrations, but you also create high-quality technical marketing materials. We met these special solution features with these eras and core statements as we see them on the bottom here. Precise, which stands for the technical illustrations you are familiar with from technical documents such as manuals, but also escape plans in hotels and such. Productive, as you are with the simple data transfer of 2D and 3D construction data, as well as all other information sources. Comprehensive, with all the possibilities for technical marketing materials of all kinds, and beyond that you can use the integrated collaboration functionality with your teams to align about your artwork. So what's new in Technical Suite 2021? We added enhancements and new features in 3 major eras. First of all, the reuse of engineering data, and then to enable you to work faster and beyond graphics production, a step into the world of interactivity. We'll have a look on the details later. Especially the 3D data transfer via XVL Studio is one of the most powerful functions and workflows in the Technical Suite, which is also used intensively by our customer Hauni with several workstations for their extensive documentation. By the way, here we also see that special details can be very important for the documentation solution finding process. So let us come to the first new features we implemented in the era of the reuse of engineering data. To cope with little challenges while leveraging 3D data, we added a new way to apply threads to bolts. In many cases, these threads are missing after the 3D import because this is just information on CAD parts and no physical geometry. Also in the process of handling metadata during the conversion, we added enhancements. So let's have a look. And we switch to our first demo file. So here's a conversion of a XVL Studio model that we moved over. So we left in some color here on top and we added the thick and thin lines. And just to remind you how that looks in XVL Studio. If we have a look here, then this is the 3D model and we convert it over, and here already you can see that the threads on the bolts are missing already, since, as I stated earlier, this is just information on the CAD model and no physical geometry. So how to deal with that in Designer, and how did we do that before? Let's say we have something imported like that. And what did we do earlier? We just switched on the isometric grid, and then we took the thread tool, and then we created a thread, and somehow we tried to add this on top of the bolt, and just scaling around and things, and then breaking it in curves, removing the contour and stuff. And so there was room for improvement, and therefore what we enhanced now is that we gave a new option to the thread tool, which is the 3-point thread tool. This avoids, if you pick that, this avoids that you need a center point. In the most cases you don't have a center point which clearly is in the center, and that makes it very hard to position the thread on the tool. So with the 3-point thread tool, you just click on the thread and you drag over it, and then you move the thread along the bolt. This is still a bolt, and you can now adjust the threads themselves. But what you see is that we still have the contour around that, and what we did before is that we break this in curves, then we remove the contour, or we have double lines and all these things, and there was slight room for improvement. And so to that new tool we also added an option that you can just switch off and remove the border, and it's still a thread but without any border and stuff. And so you can still adjust it to your needs and work with that, and that makes it way easier to deal with these missing threads. The other enhancement we added is about metadata. This is a slightly specific matter, but very important. So imagine you convert 3D data to Designer, then you get the object tree as you see here. All these parts are here, and you have all the part names. So what we know from the users is that not in all cases the communication about parts is about the part names and all these things. In a lot of cases there are specific other metadata used, like part numbers or other denominations, and if you are communicating from the documentation department to the engineering department with these numbers, then it's hard to detect which one is which in your illustration later on. So what does this mean for the conversion process in Technical Suite 2021? If we switch over to XVL Studio again and we have a look on the tree, then we see that there are all these names. What you could do already with XVL Studio is that you open the properties of the parts tree, and then you have a look in the tabs, and you can see which other properties you have in there. And let's say, let's just take anyone here. Let's take the weight, even it doesn't make sense. And then if you keep this in mind, this word weight, then you can go back to the name mapping and you just click the option display property value in the assembly tree. And then with these brackets and this $sign around the weight thing, you can set a mapping, and then you map this to these numbers. What we didn't have before is that it was not possible to use this mapping. It was just XVL Studio internal, and it was not possible to use this mapping to convert the stuff over to Designer. So what we implemented now is that if you imagine we have converted that now, don't want to annoy you with the conversion process, and then we have a look on the second assembly here where we did this already, then you see that we have all these numbers and denominations in there. And so this is a slightly improved and more seamless process, and you can decide which data you want to take over and which you won't. Okay, so let's go back to our content slides here. Close that window. And we go to the next slide. Here we see the improvements to give your day-to-day work more speed and make you more flexible. When it comes to the pure illustration process, especially in parallel perspective, then Designer offers already a huge range of functionality. With 2021, we further streamlined the most used functionality and moved it closer to your fingertips. Also here we have an example. So let's open a sample file. Okay. Same file, new challenge. Here's the brake disc with the caliper again, and imagine we want to create these elements in here and want to illustrate them. So how do we do that? Just first of all, let me delete them. Okay, that we can create them again. So I put in some details here that we want to add on this plane and on this plane something. So what's the first step? What you do, you put on your projected axis docker and enable your lid of your cube, and then you can start illustrating here right away. So let's do that. That's easy. Okay, here's a hole, let's say like that, and we switch the thick and thin to the right thickness, and then we move this a little bit. Okay, and now we want to give this a depth of 2 millimeters. And what we did before, and what is nice as well, is that you could use the transform toolbar to do that, and that's no problem. But to stay in this projected axis docker where you have been already, to enable this, we added the move along axis functionality to it, and so you don't have to change to transform dockers or other toolbars, and you can go right back into your projected axis docker. Also for beginners, this is a big help since they can see on the arrows where they want to move something. And here in this case, we want to, let's say, give this a depth of 2 millimeters, and we want to have this in the negative direction to the bottom. Then we can rotate and reverse the direction here. We give this here one copy, and we click on apply. And that's it. We are zooming in, cleaning that up a little bit. And here we go. And in a very short time, we have created our elements, and that's it. What we added also is that if you now want to work on a different plane, then you have to align the cube to that, let's say, incline here. And that could be challenging if you have a lot of those inclines and different planes. And what you could do already before is that you could save these settings in this list. But after a while, it's very tricky to figure out the right entry that fits to your incline. So what we can do now is that we can add a projection bookmark, and we give this a name. Let's say caliper 1. And now we can place this bookmark right where you worked. So for the pure isometric and standard view, that's no big deal. We can always switch back to that. But if we now align, let's say, this area to the cube, like we do that before, okay, like that, then we have the cube now here aligned to that incline, and then we can add our second bookmark, caliper 2, surprise, surprise, and here we go. And then we can work on that again, place our elements here, switch our line thickness, and give this, let's say, 5 millimeters in the negative Y direction, one copy as well, apply, and that's it. cleaning up again. And that's what I call a very quick illustration process. I just see I forgot to place it. So let's do that now. Place the bookmark here. And if I now want to change between my views, then I can just click on the bookmarks, work here, go back to that part, work here, and that's it. You can also switch them off that you don't see them. They are not printed. It's just metadata, but it's a help for you. And the more you have, the more helpful it is for you. What we also added to the projected axis docker is the projection to and from perspective. So if you want to do that now, it's already possible, and that's not bad implemented or such, but you had to switch to the transform docker, click here and do all your transformations, and this will remain, but we added some shortcuts where you can apply these things right in the projected docker as well. So how do we do that? That's very simple. Let's say I want to create this, I want to unproject this from perspective. Then I can just shift click right somewhere in the gray area here. And then I have it moved out. And if I want to, let's say, create some boreholes around that, then there's my first one. I do my rotation around, let's say, the center point of that, and duplicate it, do something like that, and so on. And if I want to project it back, then I can shift click on the lid again here, project it back, and that's it. And that's very easy to work with projecting and unprojecting. I can also draw something in the flat perspective, project it on top here, and that's it. And move it in. And if you're doing this a lot, then this is a huge time saver as well. I really recommend to play with that. I really love this functionality, and yeah, that's quite nice. So let's go back to the next ones. Go back to the slides as well. So, okay. Here we go. So what did we implement here? This is our step beyond graphics creation. The already existing sources docker got some love and attention, and you can now link a lot more and updated file formats into your illustrations. So for example, if you have Excel spreadsheets with parts tables or values, then you can just link it into your content. When you later change it on the hard drive, you can also update the content in your file with one click. Same with illustrations. And on top, you can also link content with each other with an SVG export. All you need is an ID. So let's have a look on the sample for that. If I open this sample file, then we see that there's a table on the bottom and an illustration with callouts on top. There's also a detail here, what we do with that later. But what we are having now is that this is a linked table and this is a linked illustration. Let's first of all have a look how we did that. So if we are going to the sources docker, then we see that there's already linked content. If I switch to this demo, then we can see how that works. We add a linked file, and in this case we start with an Excel spreadsheet. Here's the sample file, and there's the first dialog that we have. And we see on the bottom it's processing in the background. And now we can place it as we like. So I put it on the bottom here, draw it in there. And now we see the linked content of this file. Here's one entry more now, and we're doing the same with an illustration that we did already. So here I'm taking a designer file. Here we go. Dialog again. And we place that on top. Okay. So now we have two linked elements in here and we can start working with them. So what we would typically do is that we add some callouts. So since we are very clever, we already leveraged the metadata of the CAD file. So there are part numbers in there, and we take the object data here and just drag it out. There's a part number 13. We don't want to include the field name, and we put the callout on top of that element. Okay, so far so good. So we have this callout number 13 and we have this entry number 13 here, and now we want to connect those two. And that's very simple. All we have to do is to go to the object data Docker, and then we switch on the interactive SVG. That's a new entry that we have. And here we have access to new entries from the SVG standard. What we add here is very simple. There's an interactive ID. So we edit this thing and we give this the ID 13. And we give this a, let's say, mouse over fill. So we go to the color window and switch here to RGB and take, let's say, a blue, and we copy that entry, go back to object data, and then we copy this in here. Voila. The same with the table. Even if the table is linked in, we can select individual cells, and I'm doing exactly the same here. 13. Color. That's it. And I can go further through that and down here as well. And what I did is that I did all these things already on the front, on the first page here, and connected all these things with each other. So we can see that there are some entries in there already, like these. You can see how this is switching. And here we have them as well. And that's it. And the new thing that we have now is that when you export this to SVG, what we're doing right now, then let's say we give this name here like that, and we export it. Let's take the other one. Okay. Then we have a new checkbox here, use object data, and that's actually the data which is sticking on this, what we added here. Then we export that file, and now when we open that, we can see that this is connected. I'm switching to another desktop here where I prepared that. So that's actually the file that I just overwritten here. And then now when we move over these elements, then they are connected. And this is actually the magic that Designer does. So it takes out these IDs and connects them with each other, and adds the code to the SVG. Okay, that's a very nice thing. So let's switch back to the illustration. So that's something where you need some creativity, what else you can do with that. So here's another example what I did with that. So when you send the XVL Studio data to Designer, Then there's an option in XVL Studio 3D CAD Corel Edition that you can outline each part. What is actually done there is the illustration is done, and there's another outline laying behind it that you can fill with color or fill it not. But what I did now is that I also added to those outlines these IDs, and then we have a very nice effect here that I will show you now. If we switch to that part and we go through it, then the parts themselves are also highlighted, and that's a very nice effect, and I believe this is a very strong functionality for your services pages and on the web for your customers. And I think there are a lot new ideas that we can do, maybe a world map or whatever you can do with that, and that's all very nice and out of the box, out of Designer. So let's switch back to the slides again and see what we have next. As initially mentioned, we don't see the Technical Suite as just a drawing program for technical illustrations and all these black and white line arts. We rather see this as the central hub for all your technical visualization and communication and stuff. And so marketing material is a big point, and you can create all your brochures and web graphics and packaging designs and all the stuff in the same solution. And that makes it very attractive that because when you already have all your illustrations in there, then it's no big step that you transform this into something fancy with a lot of color on there, and then you have all in the same solution, and you don't move it back and forth in different solutions and maybe get confused about versioning and stuff. To support you with that process, we have a new Pages Docker where you can click through the pages where we have already been already, and you can now rearrange them in your documentation and do all these things, and that's a very nice and fancy thing. And I have another file here where we can do that as well. And the nice thing is that you are not limited to the pages and you don't see a picture of the pages. What you also can do is that you move something over, copy it somewhere, and just place your assets everywhere. You can edit everything and work on things on your pages, and that makes it very flexible to create your documentation at all these page numbers and all these things. And that's, I think, a step beyond just seeing pages and seeing what you have, so you can resort everything and work with that very flexible. Back to our slides. F4, okay. So that's a nice thing as well. So if we go further in our slides, then we see that here we have a customer of ours. They are a service provider for technical documentation, and they have a lot of customers, and they are working with Technical Suite, and they are also using the collaboration functionality to align with their customers. So for the collaboration part, we have it's a little bit tricky to demo that. So we have a little video that we play there, and once you see it, you see why we are recording that, and we're playing that now. So we play it now, and then we will come back to you afterwards. When coordination and approval needs arise during your work, you can easily launch your workflow from Corel Designer. In the Comments Docker, you'll find all the tools you need, such as annotations, arrow markers, etc., to make your information visible. Everything else you communicate quickly with appropriate commands. Via Save and Share, you load the file directly from Comments Docker of Designer into the Corel Cloud. There you can store the content in your own folder structures for a better overview of your projects. For anyone who receives the link to the file in the Corel Cloud, the access control allows different access rights. From no access to view only to reviewers, who can also enter comments, and finally the approver, who is the decision maker and has to approve all changes. In our case, everyone with the viewer link can just view, and the named contact in the private share will be given the rights of the reviewer to additionally apply the comment functions. When the window is closed, the named contacts are notified by email and receive the link to the file, which automatically opens the file with CorelDRAW.app. Thus, the notified person conveniently opens the link in the mail, and CorelDRAW.app starts in the browser and loads the file from Corel Cloud. On the right side in the comments section, we can already see the first comments, and above we can also see the tools to add the comments ourselves. On the left side, we now see the designer, and on the right side, CorelDRAW.app in the browser to show how the two team members communicate in real time. The reviewer enters his comments, which appear in Designer directly in the user's work file. Additional visual markers along with the comments ensure that the annotations are clearly understood. To mark content in particularly eye-catching way, individual colors and, for example, circles can be annotated. This also appears immediately in the work file and can be changed directly by the user. In this way, the team can not only work out what should be changed, but the result of the clarification can also be implemented directly. And, of course, the result is immediately visible without any misunderstandings. By simply saving the changes, the version is uploaded in the Corel Cloud and the colleagues are notified that the new version is available. Again, we see Designer on the left and CorelDRAW.app in the browser on the right. The information about the update then also appears there, which can be loaded with a single mouse click. Further, directly over CorelDRAW.app, the entire communication can be accomplished while the final version of the illustration develops. While everything is now resolved and changed, the user has changed the role of the reviewer to approver. This person now resolves all comments and approves the file in CorelDRAW.app as a final step. So with CorelDRAW.app, communication directly in the work file goes far beyond any annotated document. Okay, so here we are back in the presentation again. Let's see how we proceed now with our further slides. That's collaboration, we just have seen that. And let's go back to these slides here and our presentation mode. And here we go. Full screen preview. And that's it. Okay, so summing up for the Technical Suite 2021. We have a lot stuff in the seamless transition for 3D design to illustration. I'm very confident that we added a very attractive functionality here. Working faster is something what we always can improve, and I really like that functionality as well. And yeah, my little secret favorite is this interactive stuff, and I personally will play with that a lot. Linking files and connecting the content. This is a huge step forward, and yeah, let's see what the users do with that. What we shouldn't forget is that we embed the CorelDRAW 2021 features. CorelDRAW Graphic Suite is released before the Technical Suite, so all the features which are introduced into CorelDRAW get also implemented in Designer, and that makes it very attractive. So we have seen the multi-page view, pages docker, and the draw in perspective with vanishing points and stuff is within it, so that makes it even more attractive to have a look into the Designer. And yeah, it's all part of the package, and hopefully you will be very happy with that. Okay, the best for last, system requirements. We don't have much changes in that, but we have some more displays added here, and there's one important thing here is it's Windows 11. So once Windows 11 is released, which is anticipated for October 5th, currently it's already tested the Technical Suite for that, and if you want to run it on that platform, then you should be good to go. There are no changes for XVL Studio, and which is good, and so it remained the same. And yeah, with that information, there's one thing that is still missing, and this is information about licensing and other things. And so I will go back to Joe Levins.
At this point in the presentation, it's important that we remind our valued customers or anyone listening of the purchase options available on CorelDRAW Technical Suite 2021. There's two main license options available to purchase, both of which offer a consistent, streamlined way to stay on current technology, providing you access to the latest features and exclusive enhancements that any new release has to offer. So the two options to purchase are either the CorelDRAW Technical Suite subscription or a CorelDRAW Technical Suite 2021 Enterprise license, which is a permanent license offering a permanent ownership, and that includes a 1-year CorelSure maintenance plan. Both options have tiered pricing available depending on the quantity that you may need for your business, and we scale from as little as 1 user upwards. And both options are priced dependent on whether you are in commercial enterprise space or you're an education establishment. Whilst the enterprise license comes with an automatic 1-year CorelSure maintenance plan, it's important to note that you will need to stay on a continual CorelSure renewal plan every year to reap the benefits that are gained. That includes automatic access to future releases. So if you decide to let the plan expire, it cannot be resumed at a later point in time. Most importantly, we will honour all our existing CorelDRAW Technical Suite customer base, including anyone who's running an old version of the software and hasn't signed up for a maintenance plan in the past, with the chance to purchase CorelDRAW Technical Suite 2021 upgrade license that comes with a 1-year maintenance plan included, and this is now called the Enterprise License Upgrade. As both our subscription and enterprise license offer a renewable low-cost path to stay on current technology, from 2022 we will be phasing upgrade licensing out, and they will no longer be available to purchase. So this is a key reminder to all our current customers that there will never be a better time to upgrade than now, and to act on this and save up to 50% of the cost of having to purchase a new full enterprise license next year, then please visit our website with the URL below, coreldraw.com/technical/upgrade. On this page, you will find all the latest information on the major new release, plus ways that you can contact the sales team for a personalised quote, and we will be more than happy to help you. So just finally, I want to say thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you found this session useful, and please get in contact, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much.
Thanks from me as well, and enjoy the Technical Suite 2021.